we're really excited to be hosting this Seattle Mayoral Candidate Forum. We're really looking forward to a lively discussion about the role of Seattle's mayor as a regional leader. So thanks to all of our PAC members who showed up, and we also, for this special event, we invited all of our employees who live in Seattle, regardless of whether or not they're members of the PAC. So welcome to any of you who may have joined under that expanded invitation. And if you're interested in joining the PAC, please look at our MSPAC website on the internal internet. So also want to thank our candidates who traveled across the water. Perhaps some of them were seeing all the construction on the east side of 520. I bet that was an eye-opener for anybody who hasn't traveled it recently. So it's my honor now, I want to get right to it, to introduce our moderator, Angela Russell. Angela has anchored television newscasts in Mobile, Alabama, in Washington, D.C., and also in Philadelphia. She came to Seattle in 2009 to work for Cairo Television, where she co-anchors the Cairo 7 Eyewitness News at 5 and 11. Angela has moderated these kinds of forums previously. I'm told that in 2009, actually, she moderated a Seattle mayoral candidate debate and also one in the King County executive race. So this should be good. She's also covered national news. In 2010, Angela traveled to Haiti to cover earthquake recovery efforts there. And in 2011, had the opportunity for a sit-down interview with President Barack Obama. So please join me in welcoming our moderator, Angela Russell.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be on the campus of Microsoft. This is my first visit, and for such a great occasion for this bit of a forum we're going to have here. I want to jump right in because we only have an hour, so it's going to be tight. So I'm just going to ask the candidates to really try to be focused here. I know that politicians are great at giving us thoughtful answers, but we're going to try to make them thoughtful and concise. So the way it's going to work, I'm going to give them each 1 minute to introduce themselves to you, and then after that, I'll have a series of questions for them. They'll only have a minute to answer. Now, we'll try to be reasonable depending on how it's going, and then after that, we'll have a lightning round in which we'll ask them some yes or no questions. But let's get started right now with the introductions, and so we'll start with you here, Ms. Gray.
Hi, I'm Joey. I'm Joey Gray, and I first set foot on this campus in 1991. There was a paper job board with little stickies on it, and I looked at that, and it was a sunny day, and I went outside, and I never came back. My friends who were here working then, have gone on to develop some of the most important software products in the world. One of my colleagues that I work with for nonprofits now, as I'm a librarian and I build information systems for nonprofit organizations, he was the project manager for Excel and for Visual Basic. So he and I work together, and we go around town and help so many different nonprofits. I've also worked in education, and an example of one of your important priorities in your global public policy agenda is, policy agenda, excuse me, is that interoperability. And I've worked at the University of Washington building interoperability between the athletic department, the libraries, the time is up. 4 different departments. We built distance learning pilot project that became distance learning for the whole university. I expected to have 2 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. And I should mention that we did reduce it because of the time. So, but just do the best that you can. And
okay.
So,
thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Harrell.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Bruce Harrell, and I currently serve on the Seattle City Council. In my second term, I chair the Technology Committee, as I have for 6 years. I'm a former chief counsel of a telecommunications and technology company now known as CenturyLink. It was US West when I was chief counsel. I'm running for Seattle mayor because I'm trying to bring an unprecedented passion for excellence to the mayor's office. The kind of leadership that would make sure that all communities, all businesses, reach a level of success that truly taps into their potential. Quite frankly, I don't think we have that. I've very comfortable in what I'll say some of the roughest and toughest neighborhoods, having been born and raised here in Seattle in the urban core. I don't expect many of you to know the schools that I attended, but also very corporate very comfortable in the corporate boardrooms and reading profit and loss statements and making sure our businesses are innovative and successful. So that's the kind of leadership you're going to hear from me this afternoon, and I'm going to warmly and kindly ask for your support as this debate continues. It's going to be subliminal, though. I'm keep saying, vote for Bruce, vote for Bruce. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us here today, and thank you for putting a regional focus on the mayoral forums, because we actually have had very little to no discussion about regional issues the entire time out on the campaign trail, so I really welcome the opportunity that you've presented today. I'm Kate Martin. I bring to the table 25 years of planning and design experience, as well as a couple decades of paying attention to what's been going on in our neighborhoods, the issues, Seattle Public Schools, and the city of Seattle. And I like to say I'm also bringing 22 years of parenting to the table, which is a significant asset, in my opinion. The job of the mayor is to handle all those day-to-day operations of our city, as well as a picture of the future. I'd like to see us move away from disjointed incrementalism into a really concerted effort of comprehensive sustainability of all systems, not just a few of the systems, as we move into the future. I'd like to know if you can help me make this an election and not an auction. I'm a very serious grassroots candidate. I'd like to see us, I know you're here as a PAC, and that's a little ironic, but I'd like to see us remove money from the election equation and just look at the content. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Sure. I'm really glad to be here. Mike McGinn. And my 16-year-old daughter just posted a really cute picture to my Facebook page from 2007. She's wearing a polar bear outfit, and we're protesting the roads and transit ballot measure for 2007. And it really gets at why I ran. If you remember that, they said we couldn't get new light rail unless we spent billions on new highways. And we fought that. We came back. We got light rail alone the next year. But I ran because I didn't like the direction we were going on climate change. You know, we got to confront it. It's serious. We have to do something about it. I'm also troubled by rising inequality and that we're not building for the future. So since being mayor, we've invested more in education. We have a transit master plan. We're working with Sound Transit to get Sound Transit on the ballot by 2016. Part of that is they're looking at the 520 corridor, which is great. And by the way, we work to make sure that 520 can be light rail ready, that it has the lane widths and pontoons to get there. And I'm still passionate about all those issues, making sure that we give people opportunity and are realistic about facing the challenge of climate change. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Doug McQuaid, and I am a candidate for mayor, mainly because I'm total grassroots. I'm just a citizen like you are, and I wanted to exercise my constitutional rights and run for an office because I didn't like the way the direction Seattle was going. I was born and raised in the Seattle area, first on Volunteer, near Volunteer Park on Capitol Hill. And then I lived on the east side and went to Bellevue High School. And then I went to the University of Washington, spent most of my time in Seattle, and then I worked. Then I went to Willamette University, and I was drafted into the Army, and I served in combat duty in Vietnam, earned many medals for that. And I've seen combat, so I have what you call courage, I think. Anyway, I'd just like to see reform. Reform, reform, reform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Ed Murray. I'm a state senator, and one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is the issue of regionalism. I believe the city of Seattle needs to build better relationships with its region, and I've had the honor of working with you at Microsoft to do that. On the 2003 and 2005 transportation packages, we partnered, and for the first time in state history, we passed the largest transportation package to expand our transportation system. That meant things like 405 HOV lanes, transit grants to our transit agencies. We partnered on higher education, and we are slowly turning around some of the attitudes in Olympia around higher education. We made significant capital investments on the campus of the University of Washington, particularly as it relates to some of the areas that you work in. And finally, last year, we partnered on marriage equality, and I want to thank you for that. Those are the sorts of partnerships that make a city work and make a region work, and that's why I'd like to be the next mayor of Seattle. Thank you.
Hi, is this working? Hi, I'm Charlie Statiker, and I'd like to just take a minute to tell you about myself personally. Local guy, fourth generation, went to Franklin High School, graduated from Cornell University in hotel administration and the Wharton School of Finance. 2 years of the U.S. Army, then followed my hotel career, came back to Seattle in commercial real estate. That's important because the hotel business taught me about customer service. And running a city is very much about expediency and exceeding customer expectations. I'm running because I think Seattle needs a new direction. And I think that the future is so bright for us that what mayor will play to our strengths, who understands what economic clusters are and how we can grow and how we are poised to grow. And that's why I'm running. I have a newspaper outside that I hope you appreciate that you will take with you when you leave. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on the Microsoft campus. Thank you.
Well, thanks. I was hoping that we'd hear "Start Me Up" when the mayor walked in a little earlier, as we were waiting to get started. I'm Peter Steinbrook. I know that's history. I'm Peter Steinbrook. I'm an architect, planner, civic activist for much of my life, 55 years in Seattle, though I've traveled the world over. I spent 10 years on the Seattle City Council, 2 as council president. I work to solve problems in our urban environments and the region. And you're going to hear a lot about regionalism today. I'd refer you to an article I wrote in Crosscut in September 2011 titled "Urbanism Needs to Move Beyond City Boundaries." And what I'm calling for here is a regional governance model that sets 1, 2, or maybe even 3 priorities in the state legislature, like advocating for K-12 education and a STEM education in our state that is so badly needed. And so I want to offer you a perspective that is a regional one and why Seattle needs to get out of the Seattle bubble and work with its partners. And we'll continue later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gosh, we're just into the introductions and the gloves are already off, Mr. Steinbrook. Right, I can imagine. So just a note before we jump into the questions. I've been asked to just ask you to turn off your microphones when you aren't speaking. Apparently it's causing some kind of technical issue with the camera. So if you would just turn off your mic when you're not talking, that would help a lot. All right, first of all, Mayor McGinn, you mentioned the 520, and it's so appropriate, good timing. But I'm actually going to start. I'm not going to put Ms. Gray on the spot for the first question. I'm going to actually keep it going down the line. So Mr. Harrell, you'll get the first question, and then everyone can go down from there. And it does relate to the 520. As many of you know, about 5,000 Microsoft employees actually live in Seattle. And even though roughly 40% of those employees use other forms of transportation besides single occupancy vehicles, the commute can still be quite the nightmare. So the east side is moving forward on construction of its portion of the 520 bridge, and Seattle is still working to develop its plans for the west side design. As mayor, and Mr. Harrell, again, starting with you, what would you do to advance the development of the plans for the 520 bridge completion on the west side of the lake? 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, that's the work that I'm doing now. I sit on the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board. I've sat on the Puget Sound Regional Council and Transportation Policy Board. And quite frankly, we do have a little process on the Seattle side. There are some very important issues dealing with our Arboretum area, the University of Washington area. That's going to be a great light rail transit hub, and so we want to get it right. We do want to make sure that it's conducive toward light rail. So quite frankly, it's going to take that kind of regional collaboration as we look at the final design on the west side of the issue. We don't have the money, and so we have to continue to find out what finance packages are available. We continue to do that. I'm very confident we will have a lane that will get you to and from. It will address the mitigation issues for the University of Washington and light rail. But quite frankly, it does present some challenges. And so that's why I think you're going to have a leader that is very in tune with the neighborhoods, the businesses on the west side, including the University of Washington, and our regional leaders. And that's the kind of leadership you'll continue to see from me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, I'm Kate Martin, and I'm pretty embarrassed with the situation with 520 on the Seattle side. I think that we do have a different context than exists on the east side. As Bruce was saying, we've got the University of Washington right there. We've got the Arboretum. We've got urban neighborhoods that we're driving through with the solution that we need to create or agree on. But the thing that worries me most is the idea that the state is talking about just doing that west approach bridge north as a standalone stopgap. And there's absolutely no solution, no funding in the foreseeable future for us to actually make a reasonable connection in both the north and south, or both in the east and west direction. So it's embarrassing to me. I think it's a great example of how terrible the relationship is between Seattle and the state, and between our legislators in the state and people in the greater context in the other areas of our state. Those are the changes we really need to see in the governance of our region. Thank you.
And that's how you would advance the plans, by building a better relationship, or was there something else you wanted to add in terms of how you would advance?
Yeah, I don't think the plan is up to snuff. I mean, when I said I was annoying to come over here today, I said, I want a lid. I want a lid on that side. So I think we've really been let down with the solutions that have been created, and I look forward to us doing something not only modern but futuristic as far as how we handle that right-of-way. Thank you.
Mayor McGinn.
On the west side is the funding. There isn't actually the funding in place to take care of it, and it's part of one of the challenges we face is how do we finance all these mega projects, and as well as take care of basic maintenance, as well as give Sound Transit the authority it needs. We actually worked very hard with WashDOT on, and I mentioned this in my opening statement, how do you make that bridge light rail ready? And one of the bunch of concessions we received will make it so that it can work for light rail should Sound Transit choose to put light rail over the bridge. What that meant was how many pontoons you have, how you design your lanes, how the lane exits from 520 to take that curve towards UW, so that you're accommodating, the potential. And we've succeeded in that. So that's great. There is more work that we're looking at about how do we make it fit within Seattle. I'll note that the whole region worked with Bellevue as they worked on how to bring light rail through Bellevue. We'd kind of like the region to be able to work with us as we look at local concerns about how we bring it through our neighborhood. But the biggest issue remains by far, how do you pay for it?
Here to answer your question about 520. Living in Seattle, I've seen the plans and I'm very skeptical of them. And I do not like the idea of politicians setting up plans without plenty of input from the people of the city, particularly the neighborhoods and community groups that would be affected and what they really want, as well as people on the east side. And then find the funding, and if you don't have the funding, you might have to reduce the project. But the main thing is to explore all options and not be dictated to by a bunch of politicians who I don't have a great deal of confidence in politicians. So being just an ordinary citizen and a grassroots person who wants to hear input from everybody and do the people's will. And I haven't seen that. So thank you very much for listening.
So Senator Murray, we've established there's a funding issue in terms of completion. So how would having you as mayor make a difference?
Sure. And as a politician speaking, I believe public service is an honor, so I'm proud to be a politician. The issue of 520 is an issue of not the current mayor, but the last mayor, when we would go as a legislative delegation and talk to the last mayor about moving 520 forward. We would hear one bridge at a time, and that put us behind the ball in getting a Seattle recommendation for 520. And as mayor, I would lead that effort for a Seattle recommendation for the west side of 520. The plans for 520 financing look at 520 and I-5, or 520 and I-90 as a corridor, and I-90 needs to be tolled. You will not be able to finance 520 unless I-90 is tolled. The two things need to work as a corridor, and they need to be told not simply to finish 520, but to continue the maintenance over the years on both those bridges so we don't find ourselves in the situation we found ourselves with 520 and the viaduct, where we didn't put any money in maintenance and operations and they crumbled. Thank you.
It's interesting that the statement made before by our moderator said, geez, it's already gotten combative. The gloves are coming off. And that's exactly what I think is wrong with politics today. What we need is a leader who is the opposite of that. Somebody who can convene and can collaborate and get parties together. My good friend Ed, this is where he and I will disagree. I think if you poll 520, you will bifurcate the East from the West. You will slow down transportation. What is needed, in my opinion, is an overall state excise tax and gas tax. It needs to be passed statewide. The state must realize that we here in the Puget Sound provide great incentive and great economic, as the most trade-dependent state in the nation. Those links to Seattle and from Seattle are vital, not just to us, but to the entire state. I agree with Ed, it takes a delegation and a lot of collaboration with a leader who is not combative.
Corridor. It's critical to keeping our economy moving and allowing people to get to and from work and other trips. It carries 115,000 to 120 vehicles per day. My biggest lament is that the state did not see fit to include dedicated high-capacity mass transit on 520 from the beginning. Why should we have to wait another 10, 20, or 30 years for Link Light Rail 3 before we see that happen? We should be building that today. Seattle cannot accommodate additional vehicular capacity, car trips, I should say, which the 520 plan will bring. Montlake cannot accommodate it. Roanoke cannot accommodate it. And the lid isn't going to change any of that. It will improve the impacts in terms of the surrounding neighborhoods, but I-5 is an extreme bottleneck today. And 520's expansion does nothing to address that problem. It is a very serious congestion problem. Seattle is also expected to grow by 150,000 more people over the next 15 to 20 years and 200,000 more jobs. Our roads simply cannot accommodate that additional general vehicular traffic. So we need other modes. We need mass transit. Thank you. Regional mass transit.
Thank you. Joey Gray again. And this is actually one of the things that I testified about to the Seattle City Council, and this is the Seattle Community Design Process Report. And I couldn't get past the fact that it's all green, and we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar highway project. And on the front, the introduction says that the primary goal is to move motor vehicles. My priority is to move people and goods. And I personally am focused on bicycle transportation and walking and transit and getting people out of their cars in all the ways that we've talked about. Now, one of the things about being a grassroots candidate is that I don't have the staff right now. This morning, I'm working with one of my nonprofits on their website. I'm working with another nonprofit on their database. I know how to build systems, and my role as executive, which I've done nationally and internationally, is to be a facilitator. And with great tools like Bing, we don't have to stand up here and try to talk about all the details of every project to every forum that we ever talk to, because we can have staffs and we can have great researchers. And I'm focused on building a process that works for everybody all the time. Thank you.
Already there's been some talk about regionalism. You hear that word, having that mindset. And with that in mind, a study published by the Washington Research Council last year found that Washington's tech industry was responsible for as many as 780,000 jobs in the state, and it generated almost $3 billion in sales and B&O taxes in 2011. So many of those jobs are located in the city of Seattle and in communities on the east side of Lake Washington. How would you as mayor work with other cities in the Puget Sound region to stimulate continued growth in the industry? What would you bring to the table? Kate, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so the tech sector, one of the biggest, okay, so the tech sector, one of the biggest real requirements for us to keep this whole thing going regionally is really the higher education system, which our legislators are completely starving of money, and our federal government is starving of money with this sequester. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I think when we think about trying to move those basic infrastructures, including higher education, transportation, education in general, forward to really be the basis of support for the tech sector so that we don't have to constantly be importing workers from everywhere. I think that we have to pay a lot of attention to, again, what's going on in Olympia. I think the senator has failed us in that way, and they're basically robbing the University of Washington of what they need to be the institution we need them to be. I think that myself, with the whole idea of Washingtonians not wanting to pay tax, we have to find a path forward. To me, the path forward is to take our sales tax system and go ahead and expand that to services. That would take care of the regressive part of it and make it more of a progressive tax. We're never going to get an income tax in Washington. Let's just take the sales tax system we have and make it work.
The Brookings Institution has a great report on what they call metropolitan economies. And the region of economic, the unit of competition in the world economy is the region. And we're fortunate that we have a region that's known for several things, software being among them. Higher education is key to that. The fact that, Bill Gates could sneak into the computer lab at UW and learn something, and the fact that Microsoft has become an incredible anchor that's drawn so many other folks here. So how do we keep building on that as a region? In the city, we have a startup initiative, and I am the mayor of Seattle, so I tend to focus on Seattle. In the city, we do have a startup initiative to work on the startup companies that want to locate there. I think we have to do a better job of connecting people to each other, because when you connect people, you connect ideas. Mass transit, regional mass transit, sound transit to the ballot by 2016 is part of that. In the city of Seattle, we are also working to lease our dark fiber to get gigabit speeds to homes and businesses in 14 demonstration neighborhoods. Hope we can run it out citywide. It would be great to get it out region-wide, because I'll tell you, gigabit speeds would make a huge difference. Google isn't going to build it for us, but we can leverage our own assets to start doing it.
Doug McQuaid here, and my answer to this question would be, I think the city of Seattle, a mayor of the city of Seattle needs to be a leader in trying to improve business opportunities within the city, and whether it's technology or whatever. And I think the city of Seattle has too many regulations and too many taxes, and there are many areas that can be cut back, simplify the whole process, and make it very attractive to any business, particularly technology. And I think more technology companies would move into Seattle if the business climate were much better. And small businesses are really the cornerstone of growth, and we need to make it as easy as possible for small businesses, because they create jobs. It's jobs, jobs, jobs. Thank you very much.
We go. So we live in an incredibly innovative city and an innovative region, not just Microsoft, but small startup organizations that people leave Microsoft and start up on their own, the high-tech sector, the biotech sector. I think the city, in conjunction with the region, has a chance to build a brand new economic development plan where we look at how we can actually bring the players together, and with our university system and with some of our nonprofits, and design the future of our economy, to drive those new businesses that are being started here, to grow those new businesses that are being started here. And I think the city can be a key player in selling those businesses around the world and around the nation. And higher education is a really important part of that. And I'm really glad I wrote a budget that stopped the cuts to higher education. And I'm really glad this year, as we come out of the Great Recession, where the state lost $20 billion, that we reinvested in higher education. It is part of the answer. Thank you.
And so I wanted to just piggyback on something you said. How would you reach out to other cities in the Puget Sound region?
So I think
mayor.
it's not just reaching out to the cities. I think it's cities together or the county together, along with the city of Seattle, bringing together the various players in a larger conversation. Some of these conversations have gone on. There was a great one last week that the Gates Foundation put together. But I think we could take it to a different level of economic development. I think we can look around the world to see how high-tech, high learning pods for whatever are being created in parts of the nation. We're lucky. We're very lucky. Part of that luck was an accident of birth. Part of it is the beauty of this place. But we can't stay competitive unless we take it to that next level.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stataker?
Well, I'd like to see a mayor who has a lot of business sense in this regard, who understands what I said earlier, plays to our strengths, knows our clusters, not just in tech, but whether it's healthcare, maritime, the list goes on and on. What we should be concerned about is our skills gap. Mark Emmert, former president of the University of Washington, made this very interesting quote when he said, if we are not careful, the sons and daughters of Washington residents will be washing the cars from people who come here with advanced degrees. So we want our kids here locally to be trained. That skills gap is real. It has to start early. We need to fund early education very strongly. We need to do apprenticeship programs, and we need to dream big. We can create the finest elementary, middle, and high school in the state of Washington. And we can do that and aim it for STEM or STEAM. We need to be indigenous and to grow from within the talent that we have here.
This is a hugely important issue, and the issue falls squarely on the state legislature and its failure to fund K-12 education and its continued cutbacks in higher ed. If we cannot produce graduates with proficiency in math, science, technology, engineering, we will fall far short from meeting the needs of filling the jobs. The vacancies are 45,000 right now through the next 4 years or so. We rank 46 in the nation in terms of our lack of participation in graduate programs for science and engineering, and yet we're fourth in the nation in terms of the strength concentration of our technology sector. This is the future here, and yet we're not preparing our children, beginning with early learning through K-12, higher ed. We've got to do much better. We've got to work with our regional partners to support full funding of K-12 education at the state level to start with, and maintain and enhance support for higher ed so that we can have the graduates to fill those jobs. Thank you.
Yes, I would love to see companies like Microsoft as likely to hire and recruit from any neighborhood in Seattle and any city in the Puget Sound region as you would anywhere in the world. And to that order, in working with the nonprofits that are working with the school district, I've noticed a huge structural problem, which is not unknown to others too, but it's just the gap between the extreme wealth that some organizations like Microsoft have versus the nonprofits where $1,000 could change somebody's life. It could change a kid who has an idea, who, if there was a pathway for them to get just a little bit of seed money and develop an idea into a creative spirit like we had in the early 90s here when this company was flourishing and my friends were starting to work here, where if we could make sure that those pathways between these multi-million-dollar funding sources and anybody in any garage and anybody in any school, and make sure that that gap is got lots and lots of bridges. That's an information systems problem because, well, my time's up, but it's not just a funding problem. That's my point. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. I'd like to confine my remarks to 4 areas that I do to stimulate the market. First of all, we are one of the most wired cities or regions in the country. About 98% of our folks, for example, use email. What the city has to do is stimulate the market by making the permit process very accessible. I'm doing this work right now, whether we're leasing dark fiber making sure we have a trial deployment, whatever we can do to stimulate the market, that's a good thing. We have healthy market competition, drives up service, drives down price. We're not doing that, quite honestly. If you look at the permit process, it's very cumbersome. Secondly, the city of Seattle should be a municipal leader in how it uses technology, how it itself uses technology. We have a huge opportunity now as we look at our next generation data center, how we would use cloud computing, hopefully be one of your biggest customers. Thirdly, our hard cost. You know, we have we own our power company. We're at about 8 cents per kilowatt hour right now. We have to use that to give that to you as a strategic advantage as you compete against your competitors. And last, STEM education is going to be critical on making sure we have a pipeline of employees for you. I'll just stand and get the next question since I'm already, no, I'm just kidding.
Okay, thank you.
It's tough too.
It is tough, isn't it? Doing fine, you're doing fine. Okay. So this next question, and Mr. Harrell, you kind of mentioned it. You said something about being hopefully being a customer of Microsoft, the city being a customer, and as it relates to a program you mentioned. So here's the deal. The mayor of Seattle is the state's most visible politician, except for the governor. I think we could agree with that. And even though Microsoft is in Redmond, what role should Seattle's mayor play when it comes to supporting high-profile businesses that are headquartered in Washington State? Mayor Begin, let's start with you.
I love supporting our local businesses, our local music, our arts and culture, the vibrancy we have here. In fact, one thing we just announced with Microsoft is using them, we're building energy efficiency, using data. Right now, we're getting better and better tools to measure what happens in buildings, but we're not necessarily gathering the information, using it in an interactive way. And we just had an announcement of that with Microsoft, and that was great. So I do think there's a lot of different roles that a city can play in working with and creating change. And we've done some wonderful things in our city on the types of things we do. We have data.gov. We've held where we put our own stuff out in readable feeds. We've done a startup.gov weekend. We had the first startup.gov weekend in the country where people work to try to use those feeds. We have a mobile site. We're going to be using technology so you can send in a pothole and we can view it. We have apps like Where's My Snowplow? So I think there's a lot that a city can do to help lead the marketplace on development of new things, as well as promote local companies.
Oh. Okay, I think the city of Seattle doesn't have a direct role in Microsoft, but being a leader, the mayor of Seattle being a leader, secondly to the governor, as you mentioned, should do everything possible to promote Microsoft and to look at various things that can be done, particularly people that live in Seattle and have to commute out here to Microsoft. There may be many things I would look at to make it easier to recruit employees from Seattle and to make it easier to get to Microsoft Red, which when I was a kid was just a little cow town when I grew up on the east side. But anyway, there's a lot that can be done, but it needs some study and it needs working with communities, including Redmond community. Thank you very much.
So I want to get Microsoft into Seattle. I want Microsoft employees and Microsoft to have a headquarters in Seattle. Maybe not the headquarters, I realize this is it, but to have Microsoft employees work in Seattle. And that's one of the things I would do as mayor. I had a chance to visit your Dublin site, and if you can do it in Dublin, I think we can work with you to do it in Seattle. Even though you're not in Seattle, and Boeing, for the most part, is not in Seattle, these companies, I said remember I said for the most part. I said for the most part. You know, we're talking economy of scale here. You are Seattle companies. You are Seattle companies, and I think promoting you around the nation and around the world is one of the key things a mayor can do when they travel. Finally, you might think you're in a debate for the state legislature and not a debate around mayor. I am proud of my fellow Seattle Democratic legislators, many of you who you know them. They took hard votes. They took votes for taxes. Some of our colleagues around the state lost their election because they took votes for taxes. It's unfortunate those were turned back by the people, but we're not done. The way to make progress in Olympia is not to bash Olympia, not to bash those Seattle Democratic legislators, but to work with them. That's how we're going to make progress.
I want in a mayor somebody who champions Seattle and the region. We have a marvelous brand here that should be promoted. Think of the local companies that started here. Certainly Microsoft, but it went to Boeing and REI and Nordstrom, even UPS. The list is long. We are recognized throughout the world as starting many great companies, and there will be many, many more growing from within. I think the largest economic change we will see in the next 20 years is the growth from within. That is what a mayor should do. That is what a mayor should do for Seattle and what a mayor should do regionally. Of all the people up here, you need to find a person who will incentivize and be that inspire people and inspire businesses to a regionalism that we can be proud of. That's the type of mayor that should be known throughout the region, and we have all the assets right here.
And Mr. Steinbrook, I'd just like to add, what do you think of the role Seattle has played so far as it pertains to this question? Well, you know, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. Well, let me start by saying that Seattle is the hub, employment center, and hub city of a vast, sprawling metro region. In fact, 4.4 million people live in the Puget Sound area, with some 90 overlapping, untangled jurisdictions where densification, transportation, and the environment are some of our biggest challenges, and yet we do not work together. Seattle is not the center of the universe. It is part of a metro region, interconnected, highly networked, highly wired, and with people moving to and fro, highly mobile. We need to work with our state legislatures, yes, Senator, around a common agenda, 1, 2, or 3 priorities, like passing a transportation package, which has yet to come. It is critical to keeping our economy moving. Like supporting K-12 education, as the Supreme Court has ordered the state to do. We have a down payment with a temporary fix borrowed from capital funds from capital projects. That's not sustainable. We're $2 to $3 billion short on full funding of K-12, not to mention higher ed. We need to work together with our area legislators around a common agenda for the region, for the health of our economy. Thank you.
I'm actually from Olympia, and when I worked for the University of Washington, I traveled throughout Washington State, working with students who were applying or changing their educational plan somehow. So I'm very familiar with all of Washington State. I've seen the Puget Sound region basically paved over in my lifetime. So one of my goals is to make sure that we set up our cities and set up our jurisdictions so that we can preserve the remaining farmlands and forests that we have. That, in addition to my experience as an international diplomat, I led a sport in the Olympic movement, traveled to places like our sister city, Kaohsiung City, leading a sports delegation there, and have interacted in a way that has brought honor to the sport and to our city and to our athletes. And that kind of diplomatic experience is something that we're absolutely missing in our relationships around the state of Washington and between our cities right now. We need to see ourselves as regional allies and not fight in the way that we've turned Seattle somehow into this bad guy when our interests and all of our interests are so well aligned.
So, Mr. Harrell, what role should Seattle's mayor play when it comes to supporting high-profile businesses that are headquartered in Washington State?
Oh, that's the question?
That's the question.
I want to talk about 520 some more. Don't start my time yet.
It's your 1 minute.
In all seriousness, people come from all over the world to understand Microsoft. The mayor has to be the biggest champion, the biggest evangelist of what you are doing here, quite frankly. For the 5,000 or 6,000 employees that live in Seattle, people, they don't come to see you. They come to see this great campus, by the way. but they want to know what we're doing. That's why I say we have to champion our efforts. When I first took over technology, I started moving from Novell GroupWise to Microsoft Exchange, and that's why I started talking. We have this great opportunity. You have a program here, Youth Spark, that are changing lives, making sure that young folks are piping in and getting mentoring and getting resources. So the answers are here at Microsoft. I've been doing a lot of work looking at the Windows 7 and Office 365 in terms of what we're getting ready to adopt in the city. I ran the opportunity to chair technology, being a former technology lawyer. So again, I think we have to be the biggest promoter of your services. And quite honestly, people understand that. I want Seattle to be like a test bed, if you will, on how great a city uses technology. You've given us the answers in your model toward optimization, by the way. You know, the basic standardized, rationalized, dynamic model. No city has fully embraced that as a municipality, private corporation has. I want to be the first to do that.
Yeah, again, I'm Kate Martin. So I'm a fiscally conservative liberal, and I'm real interested in how the business side of it all works. And I think everyone in the Puget Sound region is concerned about what the future might look like. I don't think we have a beat on it. I think even right here at Microsoft, we're wondering what the next generation at Microsoft looks like. I know you just did a reorg, and there's a bright future, but I'm not sure anybody here could tell me where Microsoft is really headed for that next disruption that I know they're going to come up with. And we need other disruptions. We also need to really make our state and our city competitive. If you haven't noticed, and I'm sure you have, it's become really competitive out there. States are working against other states to lure workers. We have to remain competitive. We cannot take it for granted. Like we just saw Boeing set up in Chicago and basically start to peck out to South Carolina. I mean, we need to really cultivate these businesses to come here and the ones that are here to stay here. And again, I focus on infrastructure. I think we do have to have a taxing system to support the infrastructure funding that we need. And that is why, again, that I'm bringing up the sales tax on services so that we can have a K-12 system, so we can have a higher education system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move in, for the sake of time, move to the lightning round. And again, I'll ask you a question, a simple yes or no. Okay, first of all, the City Council concerning an ordinance that would significantly expand the number of homeless encampments in Seattle neighborhoods and allow them on private property. Are more tent cities in Seattle a good idea? Mr. McQuaid, we'll start with you. Yeah. Oh, you have cards. No one showed me the cards. Okay, raise the cards. I like that. That's even better. Let's do it. So I assume that the red means no and the green is yes, more tent cities are the answer, correct? Well, no one ever likes the lightning round, right? Okay, perfect. Should new funding for transit service have to be submitted to voters for approval? No. And should the funding plan for the new Seattle basketball arena have to be submitted to voters for approval? Is the Department of Justice report an accurate portrayal of problems at the Seattle Police Department? I love this. Do you feel like growth and city investment in downtown and South Lake Union happen at the expense of priorities in other Seattle neighborhoods? We appreciate you leading the cause here, Mayor Begin, on the cards. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now we have a little bit of time for just some closing statements. So each of you will have a minute. So let's see, why don't we start on the other end, just because we didn't get to put you guys on the spot for that. So, Mr. Steinberg, why don't we start with you and come the other direction?
You've
1
heard
minute.
me pound on this issue of regionalism. We've got to get a reality check about the future. 1 million more people the region is expected to grow by in our metro region. We are a metro nation. The Seattle area is a metro region that is highly interconnected. Go to my website or my Facebook page, Peter Steinbrück, and you will see a satellite photo of the night sky of our region. You don't see the boundaries. You see how interconnected we are. We need a regional mayor. Yes, the mayor is one of the most high-profile leaders in the state. And for that reason alone, that mayor needs to get out of Seattle and make friends with our neighbors and work on solutions that are regional, work on collaboration and prioritizing 1, 2, or 3 key priorities, such as mobility for the region, transportation solutions, which require transportation funding. We need to work with the state legislators collectively so that we have real power in the legislature. Western Washington, in theory, has the power, yet we're not using it effectively.
When I started this race, it was very important for me to become a good listener. So I did. I went on a listening tour. And this is what I heard from the people in the region, certainly from Seattle. Number one, they wanted a mayor who exhibited the character traits of trust and authenticity, somebody who was collaborative, somebody who could work well together. They were thirsting for somebody like that because they knew that the next 4 years in Seattle would set us up for the next 10 to 15 years. They also wanted a mayor with a long-term vision. And if you grab my newspaper on the way out, you'll find the 6 pillars of Seattle: economic sustainability, education, safety, infrastructure, running an efficient government, and life is too short. We need to have some fun. I want a mayor who truly is a champion and can inspire people. I hope you will give my race a chance and realize that being a non-politician actually allows you to hire the best and the brightest, and you don't have to bring a political entourage to be a great mayor of Seattle.
I'm running for mayor of Seattle because what I see is from the state level that I work at is a city that has become divided from its region and a city that's become divided from the state. I've worked on issues in Olympia that people said wouldn't happen: transportation packages, civil rights bills, marriage bills. They happen, and they happen because I was able to work collaboratively with colleagues across a geographic and ideological spectrum. That's the type of mayor I want to be. And I think it's shown in the endorsements I've received. I've received endorsements from businesses. I've received endorsements from labor unions. I received the endorsement from the Washington Conservation Voters and from Planned Parenthood. Very different groups with very different agendas. But I think the reason they're endorsing me is because they have seen my work in Olympia as somebody who can bring people together and get things done and move forward. That's why I would like to be the next mayor of Seattle. Thank you for your time, and thanks for having us out here. And since I have 15 seconds left before you put that down, and I look forward, if I win, I look forward to working with a new senator from the 43rd District, Peter Steinbrück.
Doug McQuaid, and I forgot to mention that my background includes 40 plus years of practicing law in a law firm in Seattle and then also in West Seattle, and having my own private businesses. So I'm used to, and I worked on very, very complex cases, and I worked with many, many people. So I do have some leadership abilities, as well as my military service. But I am totally independent. I am the only one here that you can't find an R after my name or a D after my name or a libertarian or a socialist workers. I am totally independent, and I am impartial, and I'm honest, and I have integrity, and I want to work with the communities, and I want to work with the people, and I want to have respect for the people. And there are no special interests that support me. Nobody supports me. Yeah, I support myself. And transparency is the final word. transparency. I will tell it.
Well, you know, I've absolutely loved the job I've had, and I've loved being able to work with regional leaders. We brought together 47 mayors around the state to work for rescuing Metro and local funding. We've worked with Sound Transit to advance planning so we can get Sound Transit to the ballot by 2016. We have over 50 elected leaders have joined my leadership alliance against coal trains, so we can stop the coal trains. I meet monthly with mayors around Lake Washington. And so there's a host of worked very well with King County Executive Dow Constantine on Metro funding, South Park Bridge, getting an agreement on a jail. But, you know, there are times when all the elected officials, though, agree on something and all the power brokers agree on something, and it's not right. I mean, we have had 20 years where we're not funding our education system. We're not funding the maintenance backlog. The roads and transit ballot measure was another great example. Everybody agreed that we had to build these massive polluting new highways if we were going to get light rail. But we didn't. It wasn't the right thing to do for global warming. And that was the time that I stood up. And I was called then divisive and contentious for standing up on global warming. I'm proud that I did, because we did the right thing. And leadership is more than just agreeing with other politicians and building coalitions. It's working for change and a future that our kids can believe in. Thank you.
I'm Kate Martin. I'm a planner and a business person. And when I look at how our city is operating, we're neither running our business very well, nor are we doing a very good job of planning. I call it disjointed incrementalism. That's kind of what we've been doing for a long time, but we need bold, coordinated gestures to move into the future. Our operations of those 11,000 employees need so much reform and change to make them the places we want them to be. What you're seeing at the police department is just the tip of the iceberg, and the immense waste that's going on in the budget side of it would shock you. I know people hate it when I get wonky and mention the budget, but I've gone through it. There's lots of problems. I will bring us those changes that we need to see, and ideas. My idea is to save that darn viaduct upper deck, retrofit it seismically, and make a beautiful elevated park from Pike Market to Pioneer Square that would be a game changer for our region and our city, just like Paris, New York, and Chicago have done, but ours would be better. So I'm Kate Martin. Check out my website, katemartinformayor.com, and I so appreciate this opportunity to be here today.
Good afternoon again. My name is Bruce Harrell. I heard Joey panders to Bing, so let me put my Windows phone down for a moment while I close. Okay. Hey, don't use up my time on the applause. All right. No. In all seriousness, I have fun with this race because that's what my campaign is about. That no one up here is a mean person. But we have a divided agenda in Seattle. We just can't figure out a way to reconcile it. So that's why I talk about being very comfortable reading a profit and loss statement, being a chief counsel, but still being a compassion about social justice. You all work very, very hard. I know because my wife is one of you, and I know the hours you put in. And you never ask for special treatment. You want to be competitive. You want to be rewarded for your innovation, for your hard work. That's what we're missing in Seattle, is a leader that can pull all of these boats together to rise. I want to convert our community centers to empowerment centers to do precisely that, to make sure I bring in the lawyers and the teachers. My mother and father didn't go to college, and I have a few degrees, and I've been able to accomplish a few things because policy leaders knew it was important for everyone to rise. That's what my candidacy is about. I ask for your support. It's electbruceharrell.com, and together we will make sure that all boats rise. I'm very proud of all the work that you do. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you all again for being here. And when we are talking about governance, one of the most important things to me is consistency and building in equality from day one. In doing that nationally and internationally, I was able to get men and women to play as equally valued teammates in the Seattle Public Schools, national championships, and world championships. I built that in from day one. We now have a gender pay imbalance conversation going on in Seattle, and it's political season. It's a time to talk about that. But I testified a year ago about the inequality that we were building into the arena conversation. Why would we have more high-profile men and coaches and athletes and spend so much civic time and energy and resources on that conversation when it was the completely wrong direction. I've been focused on climate change and the environment basically all my life. My dad worked for the Department of Ecology here in Olympia, and I've changed and transformed institutions, and we need to do that consistently, not talk about stopping coal trains here, which I've actually done myself and built databases to help people do that, but to really look at where we get our civic identity and to examine how fossil fuel and cheap fossil fuel and energy change is driving our sense of identity when it comes to sports too, and change that. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates. They have been doing so many forums. How many? Like 2 a week at least, if not more. I mean, they do a lot. Ambitious to invite all of the mayoral candidates and to try to do this forum in 1 hour. And yeah, and you did it. So thank you. And just a reminder, to vote. You live in Seattle. You should have already gotten your envelope. It is no fun going to the box at the last minute the night of. So pop it in the mail and take advantage of that convenience. Have a great day. Thank you.